short time ago, the United States military began major combat operations in Iran.
United States and Israel are launching airstrikes across Iraq.
Why is the US attacking Iran?
The United States will lose this war.
Concern over Iran's nuclear program and the fear that the Islamic Republic might develop a nuclear weapon has been a cause for tension between Iran, Israel, and the United States. This fear has mostly been perpetuated by Israel, who feels like Iran's acquisition of nuclear weapons will pose a threat to all of humanity.
If they get nuclear weapons and the means to deliver them, ballistic missiles, intercontinental ballistic missiles, they will threaten all of humanity.
According to Netanyahu, attacking Iran's military infrastructure has been an imminent necessity, but his plans to attack has been delayed because he has had to wait on the United States for green light. The US has been hesitant to give the green light because they were still trying to engage Iran in diplomatic negotiations over a no-nuclear deal. Netanyahu, on the other hand, was like, I know these guys, they will not commit to a no-nuclear deal. Plus, they've lied before. The more we delay, the stronger they get. And true to Netanyahu's words, the US also saw that Iran was intent on dragging the negotiations as long as possible. So in response, the US started moving war machines into the Persian Gulf with the intent of pressuring Iran into committing to a deal. The US was like, are you signing the deal or not? Not so fast, says Iran. But why can't we have a nuclear weapon anyway? Everybody has them these days. We just want to have them for the same reason as others. I mean, to defend ourselves. And the US was like, nope, we know who you are. The second you lay your hands on a nuke, the world is gone. So either you sign it right now or we hit you. And then Iran was like, oh, okay, well then humor me. At this point, the US is furious. They go back to Israel like, I've had enough of these guys. I've tried to be nice, I've given them a chance, yet they don't seem to be at it. Tell me, how do we handle this? Then Israel be like, hold my beer. And that is how we ended up on 28th of February when the joint attack was commissioned into what the US calls Operation Epic Fury. Trump's mission for the war was as follows: destroy Iran's missile capacity, prevent Iran from developing a nuclear weapon, and enforce a regime change. Now, the first wave of the attack was massive. American and Israeli aircraft struck multiple targets across Iran. Several Iranian cities were affected as explosions lit up the skies over Tehran and other strategic locations. But the most dramatic strike of that night was a decapitation strike. The residence of Iran's supreme leader, Ali Khamenei, was hit directly. The attack killed Khamenei along with several members of his inner circle and other senior Iranian officials. For Washington and Tel Aviv, this was supposed to be a devastating blow to Iran's command structure. If you remove the head of the snake, the rest of the body collapses, right? Well, not quite, because Iran responded almost immediately. Within hours, Iran launched a wave of missiles and drones across the region. Israel was hit directly with missile sirens sounding across several cities. At the same time, American military bases across the Middle East came under attack. Iranian strikes targeted US positions in Bahrain, Qatar, Kuwait, the United Arab Emirates. These retaliatory strikes expanded the war from a single battlefield into a regional conflict stretching across the Persian Gulf. And just like that, what began as a surgical strike had turned into a much wider war. Days have now passed since the first attack, which raises an important question. How well has the United States done in achieving its mission? Let's go through the objectives one by one. Mission number 1, destroy Iran's missile capabilities. One of the main goals of the operation was to cripple Iran's missile infrastructure. The United States and Israel specifically targeted missile bases, launch platforms, and production facilities during the opening strikes. And to be fair, they did cause serious damage. Several missile installations were destroyed, and a number of senior military figures connected to Iran's weapons programs were killed in the attacks. But here's the problem: Iran's missile system isn't concentrated in just a few locations. Over the years, Iran has deliberately spread its launch systems across hundreds of underground sites, mobile launchers, and hardened facilities. So even after days of bombing, Iran is still launching missiles. Which means that while the attacks have weakened Iran's capabilities, they have not eliminated them. Mission partially achieved, but not completed. Mission 2. Prevent Iran from developing a nuclear weapon. The second goal of the war was to stop Iran from developing nuclear weapons. And this objective is even harder to measure. Because nuclear programs are not just buildings that can be bombed from the air, they involve scientists, research networks, hidden facilities, and knowledge that cannot simply be destroyed with missiles. Even if several nuclear-related facilities are damaged, the expertise behind the program still exists. Which means that unless Iran formally abandons the program or its government changes course, the possibility of nuclear development could still remain in the future. In other words, bombing facilities does not automatically erase the nuclear ambition. Mission number 3, enforce regime change. The third mission may have been the most ambitious of all. The idea was that removing Iran's leadership could destabilize the system and allow a new government to emerge. And initially it looked like the plan might work. After all, the supreme leader had just been killed. Iran quickly installed a new supreme leader, Mojtaba Khamenei, the son of the late leader. And with that, the Islamic Republic continued functioning. In fact, intelligence assessments now suggest that the Iranian government is not currently at risk of falling, despite the ongoing bombings. So the third mission, regime change, may have failed before the war has even ended.